it's better than the first one. I never thought that for a minute. Like, I love all the Scream movies. Like, I've said it time and time again on this podcast that the Scream franchise is definitely up there with the most solid, consistent movies.
Yeah, but when you put them in order, something has to be at the bottom.
Right, and Scream 2 just happens to be at the bottom, but it breaks my top 10.
Well, there you go, man. Well, switching up a little bit, my number 9, some people might not have even seen this, but I love this movie. I've seen it when I was very small, and I've always liked it, which is from 1989. It is Shocker.
Shocker!
And if you don't know...
It's my number 9, too.
What this film is, it's a great film. It's about a serial killer who gets put to death in the electric chair, but doesn't die, and actually comes back through supernatural powers to stalk and cause chaos to people. And Agent Skinner,
yeah,
the guy. If you're a big fan of the X-Files, you know that you got Mulder and Scully, and probably the most important third guy on the show is Agent Skinner, which is basically the guy who is over the X-Files at the FBI office. And the guy who plays Skinner plays the main villain in Shocker. He's the one going around and causing the chaos and stuff. So if you've never seen Shocker, do yourself a favor, watch it. You'll have a fantastic time with it.
Oh yeah, I remember going to the video store and seeing the VHS cover with like the guy in the electric chair.
Yeah, with the orange jumpsuit.
Yeah, and it just like fucking captivated me, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I need to watch this right now.
And you know the funny thing, anybody who's watched Ernest Goes to Jail, there's a scene at the end of the movie where they electrocute him, and it's almost like a parody of Shocker, where he comes and he can like jump high because he's got all this electric shit going through his body.
Yeah.
But of course they do that in a funny parody way. I don't know if it was even aimed at Shocker.
I don't know neither.
But
I've always wondered that.
If you've seen Ernest Goes to Jail, think of the last few minutes of that film when he has that ability, and make it a horror movie and make it the entire theme of the film, and you'll get Shocker.
Right. Yeah, that was my number 9 also.
Well, coming in at number 8 is a film that I really enjoyed. Some people didn't, and that's okay. And that is Scream 4. This was the last Scream film that Wes Craven directed before he passed away. And I absolutely loved this movie.
I loved it too. It was a fucking great movie.
They brought it back. Scream 3 had the, one killer in it. And it differentiated. What the fuck?
Differentiate?
It differentiated from
that damn differential dip.
It was different from the formula. The first Scream, the second Scream all had 2 killers. Third one went a little bit different and only had 1 killer. The fourth film, he brought back the 2 killers, except this time, I think one of the killers was, kind of manipulated the other one and all that good shit. And the ending of this film, I always thought was a fantastic tribute to. It was almost like a big middle finger to Hollywood, who always does remakes with new cast but the same story.
Yeah.
And the ending of this film was basically, fuck you remakes. You can't ever fuck with the classics. That's what I got from it anyway, and I've always enjoyed it.
Absolutely. You've already said my number 8. It was Cursed in 2005. I'm not gonna really.
I thought you didn't put it on your list.
I lied.
Okay. Oh, you're trying to deceive us.
I try to deceive you. I'm John Cena. You can't see me. For some reason, I talk like Hank Hill today. Yeah, I mean, Curse was just one of those, you touched on it, 2005 films, but I just thought of it a little bit better. I just had a little bit fonder time remembering it. Actually, pretty sure I saw it in theaters, but I can't quite remember.
Yeah, I don't. I know I didn't see it in theaters, but I do remember going to the video store and, back when that was a thing, kiddies, you used to could go before the year. I think the last VHS was made in 2006, and it was the movie A History of Violence.
Yeah.
That was the last movie ever made on VHS. But 2006 back, VHS tapes was still going strong, and a lot of people still have VCRs back then.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I would go and I would rent, couldn't wait for the new movie to come out, because let's be honest, we were growing up or whatever. We went to the movies very often and, maybe once or twice a year at the most. The most, I would say that we rented movies way more than we probably went to the theaters, or at least in my experience.
Yeah, definitely.
So it was always...
We were renting movies like every week.
Yeah, because we would all... I mean, that was a big thing. Nowadays we wait for these movies to come out of theaters and hit streaming services.
Right.
Back in the day, we waited for these movies to come out of theaters and hit VHSs.
Yeah.
And go to the video rental stores, wherever. Local, every town had a local family video, whatever. Yeah. But you also had your movie time, your movie stars, your Blockbuster was the big one. Wherever you rent it from, you have fond memories. I rent it from...
Teddy Bear.
Yeah, I rent it from pretty much, if it was a video store here in town, didn't matter if it was a franchise or not, I rent it from it. My go-to, I lived closer to the airport down here, so mine was Beyond Video down in Cane Creek.
Oh, I love Beyond Video. They had like the best wrestling section.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, every time, I was a huge wrestling fan, and but we didn't get to watch those pay-per-views too often. So when that shit would come to VHS, I was always there, and I still remember the prices. If they were brand new, they were $3 to rent for a day. Mm-hmm. If they were semi-old, $2, and if they were like 2 years older or older, they were only $1. Which is why I got to rent and see a lot of the old horror films, because by the time I started renting them, most of them were 5 to 10 years old anyway. So, that's where my love started. But I'm going to jump into my number 7 because you mentioned it earlier. My number 7 is from 95 and is Vampire in Brooklyn. You already touched on this. I love it. Everything that you said. It's Eddie Murphy doing his thing. It was cool to see Eddie Murphy. You knew that he was still going to bring that comedy element to it, but he was still a pretty decent, convincing vampire in the film. He was rather fucking mean, honestly.
Yes.
But of course, there were hilarious scenes in this film, but there were
cracks me up thinking about it.
There were great vampire scenes in this movie. It was it was a classic vampire story of, I'm trying to make this woman fall in love with me type of deal, which goes all the way back to the 1931 Dracula. It's always been, I'm constantly looking for my forever bride type of deal. So it's your classic vampire film. So that was my number 7.
Yeah, it's just to touch back on it because it's very funny, but it's also very serious. Like you touched on something that I forgot to, is that Eddie Murphy portrays like a pretty fucking mean vampire, and he looks pretty fucking ferocious. Very similar to Dusk Till Dawn vampires. With the eyes and the teeth and like the snarl.
Well, there's even a few scenes where he turns into a wolf in the movie.
That too, yeah.
So, for those of you that don't know, the original Bram Stoker's Dracula book, not only could Dracula turn into a vampire, or not turn into a vampire, but a bat, but he could turn into a wolf as well. So it was kind of like he was a vampire and werewolf kind of mixed into one. Later on, when they started making films, they kind of separated the vampire and the werewolf from each other. And even in the Underworld movies, they actually made them rivals, which is cool and everything. But the original Dracula could turn into both. So
I dig it. Anyway, my number 7 you've already touched on is Scream 4 from 2011.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize it came out that late.
Yeah.
But that's...
Well, Wes Craven passed away, unfortunately, in 2015, I believe.
Yeah.
So this was his last movie that he made, 4 years before he passed.
Yeah.
And right when he passed, I believe they were working on the first Scream series.
The MTV one?
Yeah, because he was an executive producer, and I think maybe 3 episodes in,
the news when he passed away.
Yeah, the news that he passed away. But they always kept him as an executive producer on the credits, which I thought was pretty dope.
That's awesome. He deserves all the credit for this. And part 4 is slept on a lot. Like, this movie's fucking good. Like, the acting is fucking amazing in it. The brother of Macaulay Culkin is actually in this movie. If you didn't know, he plays the one of the other lead killer, the female boyfriend. And the thing that you were saying with it, like it was like a big fuck you to remakes and stuff like that, definitely got that. Like, that's exactly what I got when I was watching that, and I fucking love part 4. That's why it's higher up on the list than part 2, because I think 4 is better than 2.
Well, there you go. Well, coming in my number 6, you touched on this earlier. I got Swamp Thing from '82.
Swamp Thing.
I really love Swamp Thing. I remember, growing up, I was not a superhero guy, except for like Batman. For every other superhero, I could give a fuck less. Swamp Thing was different because he's different.
We're different.
Yeah. It's much more grimy. It's much more
it's darker.
Yeah, it's darker. I've always been, as I gotten older, like I said, I've always loved Batman, and I love Swamp Thing. Another one that I've loved was The Punisher. The other one I loved was Darkman. I've always been attracted to Wolverine, all those superhero type of movies that have a dark past to them. They have an edge to them. They're not your shaking hands, kissing babies type of fucking people. They're more like, hey, I'll come in and do the dirty work and you can take the credit.
Right.
So I got Swamp Thing. I actually remember watching the Swamp Thing series on, I think it was on Sci-Fi Channel for a long time. And that further along. And I always remembered watching the Swamp Thing cartoon. And then I realized, like, how come I don't see it anymore? And then I realized they only made like 6 fucking episodes and they canned the goddamn shit. And
yeah, we just found this out recently.
But I remember watching it. Maybe I had the VHS tapes and I just watched them over and over, and I don't remember. But for some reason, DC has butt fucked Swamp Thing so much, they'll start a project and they will cancel it. And they did the same thing 2 years ago when they brought the Swamp Thing series to the DC app at the time. Yeah. And they made a couple episodes and they canceled it. Get your shit together, fucking DC. Stop